Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Mound Talk with Sioux City Explorers manager Steve Montgomery. Mound Talk is a weekly program that gives you, the fans, the opportunity to ask the Sioux City manager questions about the Explorers, baseball or sports in general, or just seek Steve wisdom about life events that are going on out there. In this week's episode, Steve tells us if he's going to have to take a more aggressive strategy on the base paths with his team. He tells us which players in baseball he prefers to watch. And we learned that Steve may not be a zombie fan. So let's get right to Mound Talk. Well, let's welcome back Manager Steve Montgomery. Steve, do you have team updates you'd like to provide for us?
Oh, yeah. We during our last road trip, we brought in Tanner Vavra to kind of fill the void that we have with Nate Sampson's injury to play shortstop. We brought him in. He's doing a great job at shortstop. We're trying to make some little adjustments at the plate, but he's very receptive, and we have a new pitcher joining us in Chicago for our next road trip, and he'll be inserted in the starting rotation.
Tanner's quite a quality guy too, so I figured that really fit in with you guys.
Yeah, real quality off the field, and brings a high baseball IQ to the field, and comes here and works every day. And I like guys that come here to work and get the job done and work at your task.
Well, before we head into fan questions, I wanted to ask a couple of questions of my own. First of all, I know you guys are kind of struggling at the point primarily because of injuries that you've suffered. How do you keep the team's spirits up during a stretch like this?
Well, it's hard. We're used to going out and being able to put together a lineup that we feel on a day in and day out basis that gives us a chance to go out there and score 5 or 6 runs a game, and it just hasn't been happening. And when it does do that, what ends up happening is that your pitchers try to be too fine, and then their walks go up, and when the walks go up, obviously the other team's runs go up, and we're kind of in a almost like a ping pong battle where we just keep hitting the ping pong off the wall and it keeps coming right back to us. So, and then you're trying to make too good a play on defense, and it's just a big snowball rolling downhill. We're trying to get it stopped, but the only people that can get it stopped are those players in that locker room, and they need to put their best foot forward and try to get this thing turned in a different direction.
I know you've always been the kind of manager who liked to be aggressive on the base paths. Do you see yourself looking to do more to try to manufacture runs?
Yeah, early on in games especially. Over the course of the last week, though, we've been down 10-1, it seems like, routinely. And when you're down that amount, if you do get aggressive on the bases and they throw you out, then it's kind of a slap in the face. So you kind of try to play station to station when you're down those runs. So early in games, when the games are close, yeah, we're going to take more chances. We're going to be aggressive on the bases and try to utilize our team speed.
Well, let's head to fan questions, starting with Craig from Minneapolis. He'd like to know, he says, it seems like a lot of teams in the league are having challenges trying to find pitching. Is the well just dry?
A little bit, the well's dry. A little bit of it is, as well as when you identify somebody in spring training releases in March that you want, you're not the only team that wants them. And what ends up happening is that you go and you had a set number in your head that you wanted to get this guy at for salary, and it ends up getting inflated a little bit, and then you end up overspending a little bit on that end, and then next thing you know, when a guy's released in June or July, now everybody's wanting that because everybody could use another arm, so you end up overspending on that as well. So the well's a little dry, yes. There is about 2 or 3 of them out there that seem to be pretty good and seem to have very, very good numbers. It's just a matter of, do they want to play? And everybody thinks another organization is going to be calling them, and you have to respect that in the recruiting process and give them their space.
Cindy would like to know, she says, with all those long bus rides to Winnipeg, Gary, and formerly Laredo, they must get really boring. So what do you do to pass the time?
Well, Bobby, my pitching coach, and myself, we downloaded a Cribbage app. So we play a lot of Cribbage versus each other via our phones. A lot of the time is spent on what we can do to improve our team, looking for players. I use that time to kind of catch up on some emails and various things of that nature, and obviously talk to my family. It's a little downtime at that time, so I use it to talk to my family as well.
Well, I like to play cribbage, but knowing as competitive as you are, I'm afraid to play you. So, Iris from Sioux City would like to know, do you offer camps or coaching for girls who play softball?
Like I said in the previous one, we do offer our free youth clinic. I think softball is very similar to baseball in regards to hitting, other than if you're left-handed and you're a slap hitter. Everything's pretty much the same if you're talking a standard softball swing, starting your swing with your lower half, top hand, everything of that nature. So, I suggest coming out to our youth clinic. I know we have one in August sometime, and, come out and, just throw the baseball around. I know it's not as big as a softball, but you can get some good instruction on your hitting and some good advice.
Jerry from Dakota City would like to know, he says, Mongo, I found that what you said about your kids learning the curveball really fascinating. That seems to fly in the face of all of the conventional wisdom related to this topic. What has led you to follow this path?
Well, I just thought about myself growing up, what I used to do when my dad wasn't around in the backyard, and we used to play a wiffle ball game where we taped it up with duct tape, and we had one board in my backyard that was broken off. So if the ball went in the hole, it was an automatic 3 outs, and you had to redo. Then the next guy was up, and then we had a telephone wire that went right across, right through the baseball field, and if you hit it over the telephone wire, it was a home run. Well, I can remember, being 10, 11 years old, playing against the neighborhood kids there, and we were ripping off curve balls, knuckleballs, split fingers. I mean, we were just making things up to make that wiffle ball move, and I just thought to myself, man, if I was doing that at 10 or 11 with the advancement of my son's game, my son's way, way far more advanced than I was for his age. And I was like, I know he's going to be doing that when he gets with his friends. So I just thought, man, I better teach him the proper way of throwing one, and it teaches him at a young age how to manipulate the ball. And there's very strict rules on a baseball field with my son, and I tell him when he's in the backyard, please don't be throwing curveballs. We get enough of them in the game in the bullpen setting that you don't need to be ripping off. So I hope he does do that. But I just wanted to kind of nip it in the bud, because I was afraid that he would learn improperly. And we all know, even in life, bad habits are hard to break.
Is this just a matter of people overusing the curveball when they're younger, but it's still a good idea to learn as long as you're kind of doing it in moderation?
I agree with that statement. I think you see it a lot, especially where I'm from in Florida. We'll face teams that and there's one guy I can think of right now that we've faced that threw 120 pitches against us, and I guarantee you at least 70 were curveballs. So, why I don't understand at the young age why you're trying to trick hitters. You don't need to trick them. Go at them, locate the baseball. I think it applies for all levels, that if we locate a fastball on the edges of the plate, they're not normally hit hard, even at the major league level. So, but at young ages, coaches get wrapped up in wins and losses and not development. I think it's a priority to develop your talent at a young age and not worry about the wins and losses.
Phil from Sioux City would like to know, why is it that teams rarely have a left-hander as their closer?
Usually because we don't get enough quality lefties so that you have people that you're comfortable with early on in the game to be maybe a lefty specialist and stuff. This year I've rolled all year with no lefty in the pen. It was a decision that we just came through. We kept the best arms we had coming out of spring training, and we've gone with that. But I think it's a huge advantage to have a left-handed closer, because Normally, most of your damage in this league is done with the with a left-handed hitter, and normally it's sandwiched in between, some big right-handed hitters too. So, it would be nice. But I've always seen in this league that left-handers, if you can have a pretty decent changeup and just be able to spin it, those are the lefties that normally have a lot of success in this league.
Ian from Sioux City would like to know, are there players that you really like to watch in baseball?
Yeah, there is. It used to be players that I played against and competed against. Now I'm an old man now in regards to the major league team in Major League Baseball, so you don't see many guys that I played against still. But I like to watch some big hitters. I like to watch Stanton. My daughter's a huge Tampa Bay Rays fan, so I get to watch a lot of the Rays games. When I get home, I watch that last month. During spring training, I make my way down. I get to see some Orioles. Manny Machado is very fun to watch on a day-to-day basis, just seeing how he goes about his business. But I really suggest that if you have a chance to go watch Major League batting practice and to see where these guys hit and how far they hit the ball, it's truly impressive.
Barry from Lawton asks, he says, isn't it strange to see teams like the Giants, Reds, Cardinals, and Tigers struggling so much?
Yeah, it is. It really is, especially the Cardinals. I'll go out and say that. The Cardinals are a franchise that notoriously over the past 10 years have been right in that Central Division in the National League. And, even the Cubs are a little bit struggling from what they did last year. But it's nice to see some new blood in there too. It's nice to see the Astros doing so well. Organizations that have done it from the draft and, just don't go out and pick everybody's free agents up and form like I call it like an NBA super team. And that's what the Yankees did back in the 90s. They really didn't go through the draft. It's nice to see when the Houston Astros team is in it. And, the Dodgers, they're going to be hard to beat too. But should make it for fun postseason baseball.
Speaking of the Dodgers, Pete from Council Bluffs would like to know, what are your thoughts on a guy like Yasiel Puig who has all the talent but seems to do such stupid things?
Yeah, he does do some crazy things on the field sometimes. I think a little bit of it is, that it's just a fiery personality, and, sometimes he just doesn't know how to harness that. And you never want to take a guy's fire away, what makes him tick, but at the same time, he can't be going through and showing people up and making a mockery of some situation. So it's a fine line you work with. You want to play the game with fire, but you don't want to show the other team up as well.
Is there a ratio is the wrong word I'm using here, but is there kind of a determination as a manager of how much you would allow stuff like that to go on in comparison to the benefits you're getting?
Yeah, you would want to call them in and you try to harness it. Sometimes you do have situations where things are either bothering you as a manager or bothering the team, and you see that as a manager, so you call it in and you try to curve it. But you have to be able to harness it as a player. That's what makes, you don't think Puig is he's flamboyant. He shows his emotions. I'm sure there's a lot of players that feel the same thing he does. He just shows it on a baseball field, and he just has to learn when to show it and when not to.
Kyle from Sioux City would like to know, there is a lot of talk about turning to computers to judge balls and strikes. This sounds like a great idea. Do you agree?
We had this conversation in the coach's office the other day on, do we think it would be a good idea? The hitting coach for me said yes. Oh, yes, we get balls called off the plate all the time. And then I purely said, well, okay, so let's go to the strike zone that is in the Major League Handbook where we get letters to knees. And then he was like, no, we can't call letters. So it's just a huge – I don't know how they would do it. I think it would be fun to see and maybe experiment with it a little bit in in like spring training, in some major league games in spring training, but I still think you need an umpire there, and I don't know how they would do it, maybe with an earpiece or something, so that when it goes through, it's going to be called a strike. But I think you would see a lot different things happening. You would have to be fitted for the strike zone, because the one thing about the ESPN K zone that people don't realize is that it stays the same every hitter. So how is the strike zone that, say, I was hitting at 6'7", the same as Tony Campana, who's like 5'9"? He would have a different strike zone, but K zone never changes. So I think you would have a lot of things to do. You would have to be measured for your strike zone and various things of that nature. So I'd like to see it, but I'd want to see it on an experimental basis first.
The other part of it I thought about is, we grew up watching a guy like Ricky Henderson who had that low crouch, and I'm thinking, on the computer, the guy would have no strike zone, it would seem like to me.
Right. That's the perfect example. How do you regulate the strike zone? And then how do you, when you get in there, load up his strike zone for his stance? Do you have to put microchips in the fiber of the uniform? I mean, there's a lot of things that would have to happen, in my opinion, for that to occur. Plus, there's a little bit of the human element that I like about the game. I don't know. I guess if you had a computer calling strikes, we wouldn't be asking where that pitch is so much. So it would make it interesting, that's for sure.
Dan from Des Moines says he read an article that said that all the great hitters hit to the opposite field. So I guess David Ortiz was just mediocre.
There's nothing mediocre about David Ortiz. I actually got the honor of facing him growing up in Double-A. He was with the Twins at that time. I think he was 19 years old. Big guy coming to the plate. That's when, the Twins had Torrey Hunter at that time, Corey Koski, David Ortiz. They had a lot of great hitters. But, David Ortiz, yes, he went to the opposite field sometimes. Obviously all of his power was to the pull side, but I can remember him going over the monster in Fenway and hitting them straight away center and various things of that nature. So he wasn't just a dead pull hitter, but, with the sabermetrics the way it is and the advanced scouting reports, obviously you're going to put three guys on the right side of second base.
Leo from North Sioux City would like to know, what are your thoughts on player holdouts when they have a contract already?
Oh, that's a tough one. When you have a contract, I think you should honor that contract. You're the one that signed the contract. No one forced you to write your name on that contract. I don't know why we can't negotiate, if the team and you are willing to do that, a new contract while you're playing. You're getting paid millions of dollars or whatever it may be to play this game. And it's not like I look at a baseball job just like as a computer job. It's a job. You're getting paid to do it. And if my dad went to General Motors, where he worked for 36 years, and just said, "Hey, I want a new rate and I want a new hourly wage," I think they would have let him go. So I think that it's a little disrespectful to not honor your contract and go to work.
Here's what I believe to be the most important question of the week. Trey asks, Mongo, my friend says zombie movies and television shows are stupid. I know you have to be a zombie fan. Tell him why he's an idiot.
Well, if I'm being honest, I am not a movie guy at all. I'm not, and everyone will find this strange, but I'm not a movie guy and I'm not a music guy. I'm a talk show. When I drive from Florida to Sioux City, I have gone all the way without turning the radio on, or I'll listen to a major league game, or I'll listen to what's going on in the world, CNN. But I am not a zombie guy at all. Horror flicks, stuff like that, just not my cup of tea.
Interesting. Lisa would like to know, she says, I have a child from a previous marriage, but I am marrying someone else now. His mother will not acknowledge my son from my previous marriage, saying that if the child did not come from her son, then it is not part of their family. I really love this guy, but I'd be wrong to marry him, wouldn't I?
Well, I think that's the woman is very immature because I come from a divorced family, and both sides of my parents, well, both my parents were remarried, and both sides welcomed me with open arms. So I think it's just immaturity, and maybe she hasn't gotten over the fact of the breakup or the split or the divorce, and maybe she needs a little bit of time, but your son doesn't have to be around her. So just choose wisely where you put your kids in those situations, and just explain to your kids that maybe there's something wrong with her.
Our next question comes from Frustrated. He says, my little brother plays Little League, and the parents are just ridiculous, including our own. They are ruining the game for my brother by being so obnoxious at games. Any advice on what I can say to them so my brother doesn't grow up hating baseball?
Yeah, tell them to relax, because if it wasn't for parents, baseball would be fun. I deal with it on a yearly basis with my son's team, and explain to your parents that, there's only one leadoff hitter per game. That's it. Everybody thinks their kids should be batting leadoff or third and be playing shortstop and should be the star of the team. It takes 9 players to function on a baseball team. It takes nine players to get the job done. So everybody pulling on the same end of the rope will get things done. And the more that parents get involved, the more pressure it puts on the kids. You see the pressure that's put on the kids, and the next thing you know, they end up turning away from baseball. Baseball's a game of failure. That's why it's hard to play. And just let your kids go out and enjoy the game. Support them if they want to continue to play. Get them the necessary, training away from the field to help them be a better baseball player.
I think you and I are pretty similar in age. I just don't remember parents being this over the top when we were playing. Is that your feeling as well?
Yes. My there wasn't the travel ball, there wasn't the competitive baseball back then that there is now. And I use the state of Florida as an example because it's where I live. There's no such thing as like rec ball anymore in Little League baseball. It is all travel ball, and the parents are very, very competitive, and the parents are over the top. And I always try to say to my parents, I give them a get out of jail free card because I help coach, and they can ask me one question, and don't ask me about playing time. There's certain questions, and normally I'll get one parent that'll ask me, and I'll say, this is your get out of jail free card. The next time I'm going to answer you very, very brutally honest. And I've had one parent that did do that, and he got an honest evaluation of his kid and subsequently left the team. So, but yeah, everybody wants to just have their kid, and I think it's more so for the love of their children. That's what I see. They want their children to be successful, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just when you put that much pressure on your kids, you're just setting them up for failure.
Our last question of the week comes from Sean from Lawton. He says, I would like your thoughts on just 2 words: participation trophies.
Get those out of here. I don't think that you need a participation trophy, even though I will say my daughter's 9 years old, and we just went through the soccer season, and she was very, very proud of that participation trophy. But when I got in the car, I said, what's that trophy for? Did you guys win the tournament or something? She goes, no, it's for playing. And I thought to myself, even though I didn't say it to my daughter, I thought to myself, man, they just hand out trophies for anything nowadays. But, yeah, I'm not big on the participation trophy. I think the trophies, let the kids strive to do something. I think that's where, no one's entitled to get something or entitled for something. Make them work to get to it.
I couldn't agree more. Steve, thanks for joining us this week.
All right, thank you.
We want to thank Manager Steve Montgomery for joining us on Mound Talk this week. If you have your own questions you'd like to ask the Sioux City Explorers manager, please send them to us at AskSteve@minorleaguesportsreport.com. That's AskSteve@minorleaguesportsreport.com. Please have your questions to us by Wednesday evening so we can give the skipper a little time to review them before we record the show. I'm Rob Pannier, the managing editor of the Minor League Sports Report, and we'll see you next time on Mound Talk.